You know, when you get old, people think you're easy to ignore, like your words don't matter anymore. But what they forget is that experience is something money can't buy. My name's Henry Wallace. I'm 75 years old, a retired mechanic, and a widower for the last 12 years. I've lived a simple life, worked hard, raised my only son, David, after his mother passed, and made sure he had everything I never did. I taught him that respect is worth more than gold, but on his wedding day, that lesson came back to test both of us. It all started 2 years ago when David introduced me to Sophia, his fiancée. I still remember that day. She walked into my house like she owned it, perfume strong, heels louder than her manners. She shook my hand, smiled, and said, "So this is where David grew up? It's cozy." The word cozy might sound kind, but the tone she used felt like an insult wrapped in politeness. I smiled anyway. I told myself, she's nervous. Give her time. But time didn't make things better. Every visit, every conversation, she had something to say about how old-fashioned I was. Once I made coffee for them and she laughed, saying, "You still use a kettle?" That's adorable. David didn't notice. Love blinds young eyes. And I didn't want to ruin his happiness. He was planning a wedding and I wanted to help, so I told him, "Son, I'll cover half the expenses." He resisted at first, but eventually he agreed. I thought it would be a way to show support, to be part of his big day. But as plans moved forward, Sophia began treating me like a background character in her story. She never once asked for my opinion, only for my money. When I offered suggestions, she'd nod with that fake smile and say, "Don't worry, we've got it covered." Still, I kept quiet. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. When the big day came, the entire town seemed to be there. The hall was massive, white curtains, gold ribbons, flowers that smelled like money. I sat in the front row, wearing the same suit I wore to my wife's funeral, not out of sadness, but because she would have wanted to be part of this day somehow. When David saw me, he smiled proudly, and for a brief second, I felt all the sacrifices were worth it. Then the ceremony began. Everything went perfectly. The vows, the rings, the applause. I even teared up a little. After the ceremony, we all moved to the reception. That's where everything changed. During dinner, the host announced that it was time for the speeches. David went first. He thanked his bride, her family, and then turned toward me. "And to my father," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "thank you for everything you've done for me. I wouldn't be here without you." Everyone clapped. My chest swelled with pride. He gestured for me to come up and say a few words. I stood up slowly, took the microphone, and said, "I'm not a man of fancy words, but I'm proud of my son. I hope this marriage brings him the same strength and love his mother once gave me." The guests smiled warmly. I turned to Sophia, smiled, and said, "Take care of him, dear. He's a good man." Before I could sit down, she laughed, loudly. The entire hall turned toward her. "Oh, Henry," she said, still chuckling, "you make it sound like I need your advice on marriage." "Don't worry, I know how to take care of my husband." Then she added with a smirk, "Maybe if you'd been a little richer, your wife would have had a better life too." The air left my lungs. The hall went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. My hands shook and I saw the shock on David's face, but he didn't say anything. He just froze. I looked around. People stared at me, waiting for my reaction. I took a slow breath, smiled, and said quietly, "Well, dear, it seems you know everything already. So you won't need anything from me anymore?" Then, without another word, I walked out. Outside, the air was cool. I could hear the music fading behind me. My car was parked just a few steps away, and in that silence I made a decision, a calm, final decision. I drove straight to the event manager's office, handed him my checkbook, and said, "Cancel my payments. I won't be funding disrespect." He looked shocked, but I was steady. I had already paid part of the bill, but the rest was pending. That money, about $30,000, was now staying with me. I went home that night, sat in my old chair, and for the first time I didn't feel sadness. I felt peace. I had done my part. The rest was up to life to teach. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Calls, messages, all from David. I ignored them. I needed space. By evening, he showed up at my door. His eyes were red, his tie gone, his voice trembling. "Dad," he said, "why did you do that?" "You embarrassed her." I looked at him and asked quietly, "And what did she do to me, son?" "Did you hear what she said?" He looked down, silence, then he muttered, "She was drunk." "She didn't mean it." I sighed and replied, "Drunken words are sober thoughts, son. Remember that." For weeks, we didn't talk much. But then, slowly, the cracks in their marriage began to show. Sophia's temper, her greed, her arrogance, it all started to surface. She spent money like water, disrespected him in front of others, and treated my son like a trophy, not a husband. Within 6 months, they were separated. One day he came back home, sat on the porch next to me, and said, "Dad, I'm sorry. You were right. I married someone who didn't know the meaning of respect." I looked at him and said softly, "No, son. You just learned it the hard way." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "She tried to make you look small," he whispered, "but in the end, she only made herself look foolish." Time passed, and my son found his strength again. He started working harder, saving money, living a quieter life. Every Sunday he'd visit, bring dinner, and we'd talk about anything but the past. Until one day he said, "Dad, when you walked out that night, everyone thought you were wrong. But now I know that was the most powerful thing you could have done." I smiled and replied, "Sometimes walking away teaches louder lessons than shouting ever could." Now, when I look back, I don't regret a single thing. Because respect, once lost, cannot be bought back, not with money, not with apologies. Sophia tried to insult me and humiliate me, thinking I'd just stand there like a weak old man. But she forgot it was my money that built that night, and I had every right to end it. So yes, my son's bride insulted me at the wedding, and I walked out with the money. But what I really took with me was my dignity, and sometimes that's the most expensive thing of all.